I'm Francesca Tomasi. First of all, let me say that I'm really happy to be here in this training school. Can you hear me correctly? In case you will tell me. It was really a pleasure to be here these days because the training was useful also for me, so I'm very glad to be here. Coming to the content of my presentation, as you can see, is the audit procedure in Horizon 2020. So quite a technical issue and wide and let's say not exactly charming. So my intention with the presentation of today is to give you some very practical and reusable information about the audit procedure, and also some tips about how to face each single phase of the audit based on the experience that we had in the university where I come from, which is the University of Trento. So thank you in advance for your attention in this last session of the training. And I think we can start. So today, I will try to address the following issues. First, the H2020 audit procedure according to the model grant agreement. So I will try to give you a very brief description of the process. Then we will focus on how to be prepared for this audit process. And as I said, I tried to collect some suggestions that I hope it could be useful for you. And also I will show you some documents that we received from the Commission and from the audit in the last audit experience that we have. So I will show you at least what I'm authorized to show you. Then I thought it could be useful to check together the eligibility criteria for the main cost categories. So we will try to see the peculiar criteria that has to be satisfied in order to pass an audit. And then at the end of my presentation, I will present you a couple of documents that have been prepared during the BESTPRAC project that I think it could be also a useful instrument for you. Then I will give the floor to Peringe. He will tell us about practical experience that they have in his university and particularly related to Marie Skłodowska-Curie action audit. And finally, we will have the exercise, and as you can see from the title, I think this could give you a clue of the content of the audit. So you will be asked to analyze a number of documents and see if they are correct or no. But yes, here's something about me, just to tell you that I've been working on EU projects since 2008. I have been working for a European research center as a EU project manager. And since last year, I have been working for the University of Trento in the Research Support and Technology Transfer Division. As you can imagine, my division is not involved in the post-award phase. We are responsible for the pre-award phase, so we are not directly involved in the audit procedure. Nevertheless, my presentation is, let's say, the result of my previous experience and, of course, of the knowledge sharing with my colleagues from different divisions. So, coming to the audit procedure, first of all, in order to face the process with the correct approach, you have to be aware that your institution has some obligation towards the European Union, the European Commission. First of all, institution has to follow some general principles of good administration, like lawfulness, non-discrimination, equal treatment, etc. And principle of good administrative behavior. So information on administrative procedures, objectivities, and of course impartiality. Organization has also to share information on the rights of interested parties. So for example, listening to all parties with a direct interest in the project. They have to justify any decision and to declare arrangements for appeals. They also have to deal with enquiries to guarantee the protection of personal data and confidential information, and to manage complaints. And the main sources for all these obligations are, of course, the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, the Code of Good Administrative Behavior, and also the Treaty of the European Union. More specifically, as beneficiary of European projects, obligations include also to keep records and any supporting documentation at least for 5 years after the end of the project, and to provide the Commission or agency working for the Commission with any information or document requested, to make available all records and documents during checks, review, audits, investigation, and to keep all the documents till the end of the procedure. Keep original documents when possible or authorize digital copies, and to make no objection based on data protection and confidentiality. In this case, the main source is the model grant agreement. In relation to this obligation, the powers of the EU institutions are to carry out controls from one side and to applicate sanctions from the others. In this case, we will focus on the control and in particularly on the ex post control that the EU Commission carries out. There are 2 levels of ex post control. The first one, the so-called certificate on financial statement, the one you saw yesterday with Peringa. This is regulated in the Article 20.4 of the grant agreement and in the Annex 5 of the grant agreement, and is the certificate that each beneficiary has to present to the EU when a specific reporting period exceeds a specific amount. The audit of the second level is so-called audit by EU. This is usually carried out by the EU Commission, in particular by the Common Audit Service, or by external auditors agency appointed by the Commission. In this case, the article in the grant agreement that we have to consider is the Article 22. We have other types of audit, like the Olaf one for anti-fraud, corruption, and on other illegal activity, and also the control carried out by the European Court of Auditors. But we will focus on the, well, I think I won't focus on the audit of first level because you saw everything yesterday. Just to recall some information, this is an independent report on factual findings. It has to be produced by an auditor in support to a payment request of the beneficiary. It has to be submitted directly to the project officer via the participant portal together with the Form C, and it's mandatory for every cost claim whenever the amount of the EU contribution is equal or superior to the amount that you see in the slide. One is for Horizon 2020, the other for FP7. For the audit of second level, according to the Article 22, we have different types of controls: checks, reviews, investigation, and audits. For checks, they concern any aspect of the project. They are carried out by the European Commission or executive agency appointed, or by the European Court of Auditors. The reviews concern technical, scientific, and ethical aspects, and again, they are carried out by the European Commission or executive agency appointed. The investigations are on illegal conducts, and they are carried out by Olaf. And then finally, audits on mainly financial aspects, but we will see not only on financial aspects, by the European Commission or executive agency appointed, or the European Court of Auditors. The subject of these controls can be, of course, each beneficiary, but also third parties and subcontractors via the beneficiary, and in the case of checks and reviews, also the consortium as a whole. So we will focus on audit. Audit is an in-depth examination of the implementation of the project. As I said, it is carried out by the EU directly, so using own staff of the Commission, or indirectly, so using agency or external auditors appointed to do the job. It could occur during the implementation of the project or even afterwards, but up to 2 years after the payment of the final balance. This is in Horizon 2020. In FP7, it was 5 years after. The audit mainly concerns the financial implementation of the action, but it can cover also scientific, technological, and other aspects related, of course, with the correct execution of the project. So the audit is quite free to analyze even other aspects. And usually it includes on-spot visit. The audit will be followed by an audit report and a 30 days contradictory audit procedure in which the beneficiary has the possibility to send to the Commission some comments on the report. Among the possible consequences of the findings of the auditor, there could be the rejection of some ineligible cost, the reduction of the grant you received, the recovery of undue amounts, the suspension of payment, the suspension of the action implementation, the termination of the agreement with the Commission, and other administrative and financial penalties. Of course, in some cases, findings may also result in the acceptance of additional cost for the beneficiary in case he declares him somewhere. So, could happen. And it's important to be aware that in case audit will find systematic or recurrent errors, it can be an extension of findings to non-audited reporting periods of the same grants, or also to other EU 2020 grants, project ongoing or also closed, of the beneficiary. So they could decide to check even other projects when they start the audit process. So now we will try to see how to face the single phase of the audit process. As I told you, I based my suggestion on the experience of the University of Trento. First of all, at the beginning of the audit, you will receive a letter of announcement from the European Commission via email. This email will make reference to the Article 22.1.3 of the grant agreement, which is the one regulating the rights of the Commission to carry out audit. There will be also the list, of course, of projects under audit, and the information about, in case it's not directly the Commission to carry out the audit, the information on agency or external auditor appointed by the Commission. The email will have two annexes. The first one, the beneficiary information fiche. It's like a document. I will show you after the document. A document that you have to fill in with some information about your institution, about the organization of your institution, and also some financial information to be provided. Then the other annex is the list of required supporting documents that has to be provided both before the visit and during the on-site examination of the audit. The Commission will request to identify at least one contact person, possibly with experience in finance, administration, accountability, that should be available before and during the visit. And usually in 20 days by the email, the audit process starts. So here I want to show you some documents. Okay. So here, for example, you have the email from the Commission informing about the audit starting. So in this case, the email was addressed to my head of unit. And you will see, I inform you that the Common Audit Service at the European Commission, in charge of auditing the expenditure, has decided to carry out an audit on Horizon 2020 financial statement presented by your organization. So in the table, you see the list of projects under audit, and then the European Commission, in this case, has appointed an external auditor to coordinate and conduct the audit assignment on its behalf, and hence they are to be regarded as authorized representative of the European Commission. So this is the email. Then, as far as the annex are concerned, this is the information fiche I was referring to. So you will be asked to provide some financial figures, financial information, information on your accounting system, on-time recording system, and in this case on productive hours calculation and hourly rate calculation. And then the other annex, it's the required supporting documents before and during the audit. As you can see, it's quite a long document, so quite long. And at the end, they say this breakdown should include the relevant accounting codes, reference numbers, so it's very important to also inform about the codes, to allow the reconciliation between the financial statements sent to the Commission and the beneficiaries' financial records. So in case the beneficiary will identify an eventual discrepancy, these discrepancies has to be well motivated. In this table, you will be requested to produce documents, for example, beneficiaries' legal registration, beneficiaries supporting evidence or on VAT, but also the list of EU funding received and all grants agreements signed, the beneficiaries' procurement procedure. So, or here, for example, for coordinator, table on report on the distribution of the financial contribution. So this is just to give you an idea of the document. And coming back, voila. Yeah, of course.
When you get this email about the audit,
Mm-hmm.
is it kind of university-wide, or is it departmental?
It's university level. Yeah. In this case, the email was addressed to my head of unit, which is the head of unit of the division, university division for the research support. So it's a university level. Then, of course, you can identify another contact person, because probably they write to the person that in the participant portal has a specific role, but then when you start the communication with the audit, you can also identify another contact person that could be, for example, somebody involved in the post-award phase, and that will become the main contact of the auditor. But the level is the university level. Yes, let me just add that when possible, it seems that the appointed auditor, the Commission tried to find audit that speaks the mother language of the university in which they will go. And a couple of days before the visit, you will receive the sample of the cost that the audit will analyze in detail. So when you have to prepare for the audit, I think that the sources that you should consider are this one. So as we said, the Article 22 of the Model Grant Agreement, but also the Article 6 on eligible cost, but you already saw this article in the previous days. The Annex 5, which is on the certificate for financial statement, but of course the same rules are relevant also for the audit procedure, plus the Annex 1 of the indicative audit program, which is the annex of the framework contract for service that the Commission and the external audit sign. So if you want, I think I can show you briefly the document. Because in this document, you will find the condition to be checked and the procedure to be performed by the audit, so you will have an idea of what the audit will ask you. No, I cannot. No, it seems I cannot connect. Anyway, you will find it on internet. It's a very, very long document with the information for each cost categories, the information for the audit about the procedures that he has to follow to audit your project. So it's very useful to start from that document. Which kind of documents has you to prepare before the audit arrival? Of course, all relevant documents for the specific project. So you should prepare a folder with a grant agreement, consortium agreement, of course, the description of work, in case amendments, the contribution received, the distribution of the contribution in case you are the coordinator. It was one of the information requested also in the annex of the email. Then Form C for each reporting period, periodic reports, and all documents related to the specific project. Plus, all relevant documents according, as we said, to this Annex 5 of the grant agreement and this Annex 1 of the contract between the audit and the Commission, so according to the indicative audit program. Plus, all internal university regulation on travel, on timesheet, on the hourly rate calculation, and then, of course, the documents that the audit will specifically request. It could be, irrelevant, but actually it's very important that you prepare folders in a logic and clear order. If possible, one folder for each topic. On the right top of each document, write a code and try to prepare an index to guide the auditor when he's looking for a specific document. The same if you need to send electronic files. So save them with a specific code in front, use different folders, and prepare an index. And try to follow the order and the definition provided in Annex 5 when you are collecting documents. So try to follow that order of cost categories. So from personnel cost, subcontracting, third parties, and other direct costs. When you prepared everything and sent everything, then it's the time of the examination on site that should last around 1 week and should include at the beginning an opening meeting. During the meeting, you will discuss with the audit some general information about the organization, the projects under audit, the financial administration procedure, and the internal control system. And you also agreed on the agenda for the week. Then the audit will start the analysis of the system, and he will test the system. So he will collect information, he will analyze documents, he will do the interviews, and he will listen to the project presentation. At the end of the week, you will have the closure meeting. So we will discuss in this meeting with the audit the preliminary audit findings and observation. Just some recommendation about the on-site visit. As I said, during the visit, it's good to identify one administrative staff that will follow the audit the whole day. But also in our last experience, the auditor asked for meetings with researchers and PI. So it's very important, first of all, to assure that they will be there during the week, but also maybe to prepare them and be coordinated on the answer that you will give to the auditor. And also, auditors could ask to visit labs. In our case, it has been very much appreciated to organize some presentation done by the PhD. That way they were presenting the experiment done in the laboratory during the project. So this is something that you can maybe organize. Yeah. You're right. In that case, I mean, you cannot oblige them to come back. So, but if they are still there, okay, in case the project is still ongoing, no problem. In case the project ended, if they are there, they should be informed about the audit and be involved. In the sense that it's not only an administrative and financial process, but it's more and more involving also the research part. So they will be asked also to answer to questions about, I don't know, timesheet, events, and deliverables. So it's good that they are informed. But of course, if they are in another institution, this is not possible. So. So at the end of the audit, we will have this final meeting, auditors plus the administrative staff involved, answer together to the issues of the indicative audit program. So you will check with the auditor all the procedure he performed, and you will agree and confirm the factual findings he found. You will also read together the audit minutes with some anticipation on the audit report. And in this occasion, he will communicate eventual additional documents that you will have to send usually by 1 week. After the closure of the audit, you will receive a first draft of the audit report. Then you will have this contradictory audit procedure, 30 days for the beneficiary to send any comments, and then you will arrive to the final audit report with a letter of audit conclusion. And I will show you also in this case the documents. Of course, I cannot show you the report, but I will just show you the index, just to give you an idea of what you will find in the audit report. So, part 1, an executive summary with the audit adjustment and recommendation for system improvement. Then the follow-up of previous audits carried out in the organization. Part 2, general information on the organization. Then in part 3, information on the audited organization, audit work and findings. And then 4, direct personnel cost, 5, cost of subcontracting, other direct cost, indirect cost. You see the main cost categories that we were mentioning, specific budget categories, receipt, conversation rates, then the coordinator role, and some annex with the cost claim according to financial statement, analysis of the direct personnel cost, work performed, beneficiary comments. And this document is 45 pages, so it's quite a big document. And then let's come back. Oh. Okay. Implementation of audit results. We already said that normally it occurs an adjustment of ineligible cost or administrative and financial penalties, reduction of grant, and possible extension of audit funding to other grants of the beneficiary. Now, I think it could be useful to see the main cost categories, and let's try to check the most peculiar criteria that you have to satisfy if you want to pass an audit. I know that this is a subject that you already face with my colleagues, so I will try to focus only on some particular aspect, which I also underline with a different color in the slide, some issues that could also be useful for the final exercise. So I try to underline the information that you could find useful also for the exercise at the end of the session. Eligible costs, just to review a bit, we know that costs have to be actual and not budgeted cost with proof of accounting system, incurred during the project period, foreseen in the project budget, necessary for the implementation of the project, clearly allocated to the project, in conformity with beneficiaries' internal guidelines and procedure, and of course with national legislation, and then reasonable, justifiable, and verifiable. Here again, check the factual findings included in the 2 annexes I was mentioning, and we will see the cost categories as presented in this annex. So these are the cost categories, and let's try to start with the personal cost. In this case, it could be very useful to provide the auditor with a declaration of the PI on the research group for each reporting period, attesting the list of persons involved in the project, their role, their position, and also the type of contract. If possible, update CV of each research group member and check if online they have some CV maybe not updated or with different information respect to the CV that you have. Then assignment letters of the research group member signed by the head of the department or head of the faculty for each reporting period. And then, of course, information on the selection procedure when you have person hired directly on the project, employment contracts or equivalent, payroll, bank statement. And again, reconciliation of personal cost with what you declare in the financial statement, the description of the methodology that you use to calculate personal cost, the beneficiary usual policy in payroll matters, salary policy, overtime, etc., and the applicable national law on taxes, labor, and social security. Be aware that the audit can decide to check also other projects because he wants to verify that if the same rules have been applied also in other projects. So he can decide to check also other proposal. He will, and for this, he can do this check also to verify possible double funding. For a natural person working under a direct contract, he can check that the hourly rate are not significantly different from the hourly rate of personnel performing the same task under an employment contract. And in our case, for example, he decided to reclassify cost related to two research contracts from the subcontracting category to the personnel cost, because they fulfill the condition set out in the model grant agreement for being eligible as personnel cost. So he moved the cost from one category to the other. As far as productive hours are concerned, I would only say that the annual calculation of productive hour has to be based, as you know, on the last closed financial year. So this is very important. Then timesheet, you will be asked to describe the time recording system. All individual timesheets have to be filled in and signed monthly on a paper or electronically, and the data of the signature must be very well indicated near each signature. And all monthly reports have to be signed by the PI of the project or head of department or faculty. Verify that hours charged in the action in the financial statement match with those declared in the timesheet. Verify that hours don't exceed the productive hours, of course, and that hours declared worked are within the project period. For the person selected that worked exclusively on the action on the project without any timesheet, the auditor will verify the evidence demonstrating that they were really working only on the action. So you need to provide the audit with a beneficiary declaration, at least. Consider that professor cannot be considered fully working on the project because they have other tasks, so educational and others. So for subcontracts, the use of subcontracts has to be foreseen in Annex 1. And as you know, no subcontracting have been allowed between the consortium partners. And no subcontracting are awarded to other beneficiaries in the consortium. Travel, again here I think these are information that you already had in the previous session, so I just want to say that travel costs have to be correctly identified and allocated to the project with specific reference to the project, but also to the person who took the expenses. And check that travel costs don't include ineligible expenses like private expensive minibar, travel agency fees, and things like that. Equipment, here you have to make attention to the amortization in conformity with the beneficiary's internal guidelines. Specify the extent to which the assets were used for the action, so supported, of course, with reliable documentation like logbooks, register, diaries, internal invoices. And also in this case, the description on invoice have to be very clear with a clear reference to the specific project. The asset has to be physically there, and the audit can, check this. And you have to be careful and not include the VAT when but is non-deductible. So. Other goods and services, again, they have to be described in the Annex 1. You have to be very careful that, I mean, you only include eligible cost. As I said, I wanted to show you, to make reference to these documents. The first one is a guideline for financial management of Marie Zlodowska-Curie Action, supporting documents for the checks. This was one of the deliverable of the working group on finance, and I think it's very useful because it's like a checklist where you will find for Marie Curie Zlodowska. You will find for each cost category the type of documents that have to be provided. And in the second case, I recommend you to see at this presentation done by Cristina Fonseca, coming from the Common Audit Service of the Commission, in one of the workshops of the BESTPRAC. So this to give you an idea. And then I think I will leave the floor to Peringe.